honored to be the current president of the Lower Cape Fear League, and we're really glad to have you here for our annual program planning meeting. This is when we get to set our priorities for the next year, which for us will start in July of 2021 and run into 2022. This is a first for us, doing it on Zoom. We managed to get last year's meeting in before the pandemic shut everything down. So if we have a few glitches, please be patient with us. We will try and work through those. We are recording today's program, so we don't miss any of your ideas and comments. And we'll also mute everyone to keep background noise down. So if you get called on to speak or you are a speaker, please remember to unmute yourself. Getting input from our members for our program plans is the reason for this meeting. And over the next 2 months, the action teams will be working on finalizing those plans for the upcoming year. And we will vote on those at the June 12th annual meeting. So put that on your calendars too. At the bottom of your Zoom page, you will have some icons which include a way for you to interact with today's meeting. If you have questions for a presenter, you can either write them in the chat or you can simply raise your virtual hand. And if you have not used that virtual hand before, you will find it either in the participants or the reactions icon at the bottom of the page. You simply click on that. You'll raise your hand. It'll come up beside your name. And Allison, who is our UNCW intern, one of them working with us this year, will call on you. She's going to monitor that chat and those questions. So you have a couple of ways to interact. Does anyone have any questions about where to raise their hand? We all good with that? We've Zoomed for a year, so I imagine we're all pretty proficient at doing this now. Background information for today's meeting was sent out in advance. And so you have information with the agenda, you have information on all the work that's been done over the last year. And I hope you're as impressed as I have been by the work of the action teams, even during a pandemic. It's pretty impressive. We're now going to build on those goals and that work from this year going forward into the new year. And you can refer to those goals in your comments, but we're really going to focus on the proposed goals today in our conversation and the presentations you'll see. Included with the action team updates, you had a report from our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force, which is a new initiative for us. DEI is a national objective of the League of Women Voters. And here in the Lower Cape Fear, we are applying a DEI lens to all of our work, including developing a membership that more fully reflects the local demographics in this area and targeting our work toward underserved communities. And you'll see some of those initiatives presented in the goals that you will hear about today. To keep our time commitment manageable, because we have a lot to cover, we're limiting each action team section to 15 minutes. That will include the presentation and an immediate Q&A after that presentation. You'll hear from the team leaders in that time, but the Q&A is our time to talk. We want to know what you like about their goals. What you think is missing? What would you add or change? Do you know of any organizations or individuals that might help us achieve those goals? And would you volunteer to help make those happen? We're always looking for new volunteers. If you have an idea that doesn't really fit into one of the reports, but it triggers that idea in your mind and you want to bring it up, please do. Write it in the chat, we'll capture it. And at the end of the meeting, Bridget's going to pull up our parking lot and we'll have all of those comments there so that we can really talk about them in more depth with the league going forward. I don't think I have any other housekeeping things to cover. If there aren't any questions from any of you, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Bridget, who is going to make our first presentation on the Women Issues Action Team.
All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm Bridget Tarrant, and I run the Women's Issues Action Team, along with a great group of members who are assisting with these goals. So the goals on your screen are our proposed goals for the upcoming year. And of course, we're always looking for input on goals, as Catherine mentioned. So goal number one, been working diligently on trying to get Medicaid expansion passed in North Carolina. So last week we held a town hall with panelists from around the state talking about kind of a Medicaid expansion 101, what it is, who would be covered, that sort of information. And what's happening currently is with this new Biden administration's COVID relief bill, there will be a very big advantage if North Carolina would expand Medicaid. We would have a lot more money coming into the state to cover everybody in the state that is currently getting Medicaid. So keep fingers crossed that that bill passes through the House again this week, and hopefully we can get Medicaid expansion placed on the agenda. We've been working with multiple partners across the state. So if you look down at the bottom of the screen, lists a lot of or several of our partnering organizations. So we're keeping abreast of what's happening and what action items are going to occur after we find out about the passage of this current COVID relief bill. So be on the lookout for action items, hopefully shortly this week. And that kind of leads into our second goal, which is just getting a good single payer healthcare pass for the whole country so that we have better health insurance for all citizens of the United States. And this is a National League position that we're taking as well. And then our third goal, proposed goal, is we've been working on ratification of the ERA in North Carolina and at the federal level. So there's hopefully going to be some movement. We've been working with ERA NC Alliance and the ERA Coalition just to get, first of all, to get bills in front of our North Carolina General Assembly on the ERA, which those bills were presented January 27th, but have not yet come to the floor for a vote. But we've also, so that's at the state level, but we've also been working with several organizations to try to get the Biden administration to get the ERA ratified at the at the federal level. So there's been a lot going on with the ERA, and we've been sending out messages to our Women's Issues Action Team on any action items that they can take to help both at the state level and at the federal level to get the Equal Rights Amendment passed. And then, of course, we're going to monitor and respond to any local or regional women's issues as they arise. So keeping abreast of what's happening and any actions that we need to take to assist with women's issues. And then we see the list of all of our partnering organizations. So I'm not going to read them, but we do work with quite a few groups, both at the state and the national level, to help work on our action team goals. And one interesting thing that has just occurred within the last month is that we've joined together with other leagues across North Carolina to form a working group, which is listed down there as our League of Women Voters North Carolina Healthcare Working Group. So we've got currently, I believe, 5 leagues across the state who are all working on healthcare in one way or another. So that's a good development that just occurred within the last month, and we're going to try to all join together to work on North Carolina and federal healthcare issues. All right, and that is what we have proposed for the next year. So if anybody would like to suggest any other goals, or if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Yeah, Marlene, if you want to go ahead and ask your question.
Okay. Oh,
Marlene, you're muted.
We do have
Okay,
one
can you
question.
hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Are you doing anything with raising the hourly wage? Because North Carolina has one of the lowest federal hourly wages, and this affects mostly women are the people that are holding those jobs.
10 minutes.
You know, that is a great question. That's what some of the groups that we've been working with as far as Medicaid expansion are also working towards this hope, like a people's working, what are we calling it? People's working group. So working towards not only Medicaid expansion, but a living wage. So raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, and then housing. So the housing issue. So there's like 3 platforms. We haven't taken up the other 2, but probably if we have people interested that could help with those 2 issues, that would be great. Because that is kind of a package. Those 3 issues are linked together, and there's groups, multiple organizations across the state that are working on those 3 platforms. We've kind of just been sneaking in at the Medicaid, working on the Medicaid expansion part, but you're right, it all links together. So that's definitely something we could take up. Thank you.
Okay, I believe Ms. Sharon's raising her hand.
You're on mute.
You're muted, Ms.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, Bridget, I was wondering if the league has contacted the North Carolina Women's Forum as perhaps a partner. I hate to say we've been at the ERA and they were still working at it when I retired to get that legislation passed, but they're very active with the legislature throughout the state and maybe of some assistance.
Okay. Yeah, I was not aware of that group. So thank you. And that is different than the North Carolina Council for Women and Youth Involvement.
Yes.
It
That was a spinoff of the original North Carolina Women's Forum.
Okay.
But we spent a good time working with women to train them for political office and how to raise funds.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, there are so many groups, and what's
know.
been kind of nice about Zoom is that it's brought all the groups together. I feel it's easier for us to meet with people across the state. So
Agreed.
kind of a good spinoff, if you can look at any good spinoff from the pandemic. But thank you for that.
Okay, I believe Ms. Beth has her hand.
Yeah, Bridget, just a question with this with the League State Healthcare Working Group. Are they looking at how the Medicaid transformation to managed care will roll out starting this summer?
We have not worked on that. It is a huge issue. So it was challenging to get our panelists all able to meet at the same time and get prepared for our town hall, because they're all working really hard on getting this rolled out. They have everything in place. And they've done, I mean, I know there's a lot of education that's been held on Medicaid transformation, but we have not done anything with that. So one of the asides is that I guess the General Assembly said this was their first goal, was to get Medicaid put into the hands of private insurers, which is going to happen. This Medicaid transformation is putting all the Medicaid insurers into like a private organization, private insurers. And then that's rolling out July 2021, so this July. And then the General Assembly in the past said, once that rolls out, then we'll do Medicaid expansion. So another, hopefully, reason that there's no more reasons for the General Assembly to say they don't want to do Medicaid expansion. So that's a long answer to say that, no, we're not doing anything with Medicaid transformation, but we are aware it's happening.
Okay, because
Yeah.
it might be useful for some groups to keep an eye on how it's going for individuals, because if individuals can't get health care with the group they signed up with, if they can't get all their doctors, that could become an issue.
Yes, and that's part of the problem with the transformation, is there's so many different options that some people's, like you said, some people's doctors are not going to take that on. additional paperwork. So thank you.
Okay, and we have one last question in the chat I'm seeing right now. It's how alive is the ERA in North Carolina and at the federal level?
Okay, well, at the state level, January 27th, the bills were brought to the House and the Senate. So it's House Bill 8 and Senate Bill 15. So they have been introduced to the General Assembly and they're sitting wherever they go. I am not going to let anybody feel like I really know everything that happens at the General Assembly level. I don't, but I know that they've been introduced and they're in their process of however they get to the floor. And then at the federal level, there's quite a few things going on. So one is that groups across the country have written a letter to the Biden administration to get him to lift the restriction for the archivist at the federal level to allow the ERA to be ratified. So that's where it kind of got hung up. So there are 38 states that have ratified the ERA. So it should have become an amendment already, but it was held up at the archivist level. So there's push to get that taken away so that the archivist is allowed to let the ERA become a new amendment because 38 states have ratified it. So by law, it should be able to be an amendment. So there's that. And then there's also bills in the Senate, well, actually the House and the Senate again, to remove the deadline for the ERA. So there's a whole stink over there being a deadline and they're trying to get rid of that deadline. So there's multiple angles at the federal level that are being looked at to get the ERA finally passed. So we're hoping it's going to be within the first 100 days of the Biden administration that this gets resolved and the ERA is finally been a 28th Amendment. So.
Thank you. I believe Ms. Catherine had her hand raised.
Real quickly, I got a letter back from Richard Burr about the ERA, which basically said the 14th Amendment covers everybody and we are already in the Constitution. And I'm hoping that we can come up with a really good message back to those people.
Right. So interestingly enough, if anybody has seen the Netflix series Amend with Will Smith is hosting that, the 4th episode talks all about how women are not covered by the 14th Amendment. And I haven't responded to Senator Burr yet, but I was going to refer him to watch that episode because it succinctly in an hour explains how multiple times women have tried to use the 14th Amendment to say we're equal and it never works. So yeah, I think I'm going to just send them that. Please watch the 4th episode of Amend on Netflix. And if you need a subscription, I'll let you borrow mine for the night. And I think Marla says she has an update because Marla is our ERA NC Alliance person. So she's in the know of all the updates. So yeah, Marla, you got some updates on ERA?
I do. And it just happened this week. So I just wanted to let you know that the Federal Circuit Court did deny our lawsuit that we filed with Illinois, Nevada, and Virginia on the archivist. And so that has been denied. The reason that they stated was because the time limit had expired. And so now we're expecting that to go to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, so there is precedent about this whole time deadline. There is a precedence that's already taken place. So there's multiple lawsuits because it's happened before. The Congress has passed a bill that was like 107 years later. Some amendment that was put on the books and was finally passed after 107 years. And at the top of my head, I can't remember the name of it, but yeah.
Yeah, and then on the General Assembly front in North Carolina, we've introduced the bills, but one of them is hung up in the Rules Committee right now. And so we've had an opportunity to meet with some of our local leaders. It's coming up, but we've had to reschedule that a couple times, but we will be there to have those conversations. So we are trying to meet with legislators as we can, and we'll also send out action alerts when it's really time for us to make phone calls and things like that to them. And it is International Women's Day and month. So we certainly are putting a lot of ERA pressure. So if you are, can take part in the social media campaign, that always is helpful.
Time.
ERA issues especially.
15 minutes.
Thank you, ladies.
Okay, thank you. I would like to next up introduce Ann Eidelman from the Education Action Team. Turn it over to you, Ann.
Okay, can you hear me? I think I'm unmuted. All right, well, good morning. It doesn't feel so personal talking to you all here over Zoom as it would in person, but our action team welcomes any of you interested in education. I'll put in a plug. We meet on the third Thursday of the month at 10 o'clock via Zoom. Everyone is welcome to come and attend, see what we do. And if you would like to help in our efforts to ensure a quality education for all students, please come and join us. So this year has been a real challenge for us with the pandemic. We've had to educate ourselves on the problems associated with remote learning because schools actually shut down. We've had to learn about the conditions necessary for safe school reopenings and the stresses and challenges faced by students, families, and educators who are trying to adapt to all of these changes. This has been especially hard for some of our low-income or at-risk students, many of whom lack supervision and support with their studies, and many of them also don't have convenient access to the internet. So that's brought up a whole nother equity issue. Our action team has been focused on early childhood education for the last couple of years. That's our first goal on the page here on the slide. In October 2019, we wrote, or rather Beth wrote, a report on our research into the remarkable benefits of quality pre-K and also the challenges that come with funding and access to our NC pre-K program. This past year, we've been sharing our report and building alliances and partnerships with other North Carolina leagues and advocacy groups to assist us with advocating for increased funding for early childhood. We've written letters to legislators, we've shared action alerts related to COVID relief funding for schools and childcare. We've presented at a League of Women Voters NC webinar. And this past weekend, we were one of the presentations on a webinar on early childhood education sponsored by the League of Women Voters, Orange, Durham, Chatham counties. And that's where we got introduced to a very impressive legislator whose name is Representative Ashton Clemens from Guilford County. And she's actually going to chair the newly founded Early Childhood Education Legislative Caucus. This is going to be bicameral, both in the Senate and the House, and bipartisan. And we're really hopeful that this connection is going to turn into a very productive relationship. We've also been active with the new Hanover County Resilience Task Force. That's our second goal on the slide here, supporting them in their efforts to address mental health and resilience needs in the schools. And that's been really important and very significant for this year through the pandemic. We also participate on their 0 to 8-year-old committee, which is looking at data to explain why so many children are entering kindergarten in our city schools not ready to learn. And this is despite our county's efforts to provide quality pre-K experiences to low-income families. And our city schools, of course, have an overrepresentation of low-income students. We're excited to announce that all of our members will have the opportunity to learn more about the brain science behind stress and how to build our own resilience skills during the March and April Hot Topics. Javen A. Skiba from the Resilience Task Force will present to our members. Javen A. is a certified community resilience model trainer, and we hope you'll all be able to join us for what will be a 2-part Hot Topic series that promises to be informative and also personally rewarding, I hope, in building our own capacity to respond to stress. And I don't know about all of you, but I think we've all been exposed to more stress than we would like this past pandemic year. Finally, our third goal up here is at the end of the school year, we believe that we will need to look at the impacts of this pandemic year on student achievement and social emotional functioning in our school districts, and that's Brunswick and New Hanover, and monitor our district's plans and strategies to provide remediation over the summer and next school year for struggling students. We know that districts are planning for some form of remediation at this point, but the funding at state level and how they're going to do that is still unclear. We'll continue to observe school board meetings, and also we are attending, it's all virtually, attending the New Hanover County School Boards. They have an equity, diversity, and inclusion committee. We attend their meetings, and we're hoping anyway, we'll be able to advocate for all students to have equal access to educational opportunities. Finally, as most of our action teams do, we have a goal to monitor and respond to local and state education issues. And this is where we feel we need to use our partnerships and relationships that we are continually building with other league action teams, and also our local partner organizations, which include the Y, Smart Start, which is early childhood 0 to 5 years old, and the New Hanover County Resilience Task Force, which the Women's Issues Action Team also work with them. So we have some collaboration going on there. And with that, I'll open it up to questions. If anyone has questions, comments, new goals.
Right now, I'm not seeing any, but if anybody has any.
Guess that means we've been very thorough or overwhelming, one or the other. We have 2 people raised a hand, I see. I can't see who they are.
I'm sorry, I got lost down in the bottom. Miss Catherine has a question.
Unmute. And you mentioned the school board's DEI work. Is that only for New Hanover, or is Brunswick undertaking that too?
I have not seen anything that Brunswick is undertaking anything in that. Barbara Carbonara, do you have any information on that? Not to our knowledge at this point. I don't hear anything from Barbara, so I'm assuming not.
Okay.
Okay, now Miss Gail has a question.
Gail, you're on mute.
I unmuted myself, but somehow I got muted again. You have had a lot of support from both parties in terms of the legislature is for pre-K initiatives. Do you see that as continuing, and are you thinking that the legislative group is going to be one that is very much representative of both parties?
I believe it'll be representative of both parties in that there will be a chair from both the Republican and the Democratic parties for this new legislative caucus. I don't know who the team members are going to be. It's brand new. I don't even know who all the chairs are yet. So they have their first meeting on the 18th. So we're going to have to learn about that. I think that one of the problems is there's a lot of verbal support. Everybody says, yes, pre-K is really, really good. Early childhood, we get all of these. This is very cost effective. We're getting children early and we're helping them succeed. It's when it comes to financing that and funding that, it's a problem. And so I think it's a matter of, are they going to walk the walk? And but I think the really good part is that this legislative caucus is being formed, and we have this connection now with Representative Clemens, and so at least we can follow along and find out what people are thinking and in a better way. But where it's going to go, I don't know. I mean, Representative Clemens herself said it on the webinar that one of the problems is actually getting people to part with their money when it comes to the General Assembly and to fund these things. They don't mind putting in some one-time funding. It's recurring funding. And if you're going to fund a program, it has to be recurring funding in the budget.
Thank you. I believe Catherine has her hand raised, and then Bridget has a question.
In a lot of the DEI work that we've been doing lately, there's been a lot of discussion about the impact of neighborhood schools. And in New Hanover County, we are so segregated in our neighborhoods that we have segregated schools really now, a great effect. Have you thought about adding anything in that area, or do you think that will come up under your study about the impact of COVID-19?
I think it comes across everywhere. It's certainly one of the issues that we continue to look at. There is a group called Community Relations Advisory Council, CRAC, and that is an advisory council to both the county and the city in New Hanover County. And one of the they actually did a report on the impact of neighborhood schools and the ongoing impact on educational opportunities for children and also achievement. And so they're working on that right now, and we're observing and been talking to them about maybe at some point being able to support their efforts. The problem is no one's really come up with a good solution yet to put their weight behind. So definitely it's an issue we're monitoring very closely. We've been monitoring it for years. It's just a very intractable situation.
It's definitely a DEI issue as far as equity for students in the city. Yeah.
Yeah.
Next, I think Bridget had a question.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Allison. So my question kind of goes with the diversity, equity, inclusion as well, but I've seen talk about having broadband become more of a utility like water and electric. Is that something that your group is kind of working on as well, as far as that, getting that access for education? Or is that something that just in the work, like people talk about, but nothing's happening, right?
We've been monitoring it in the sense of making sure, trying to find out what New Hanover County is doing in terms of broadband access for students. And all students we know have been given some kind of a device and a way to hook up to the internet. They've been working on that. That doesn't mean that it's as convenient for some students as others. They may have to go to a parking lot, they may have to go to another site to access it. And, some students just don't have the same access and support for remote learning as other students do. So we're monitoring it. The legislators have been talking about that. I think this has made them realize the importance of more equitable broadband access, how important this actually is. So there's movement on it. It's not a particular goal, but I guess what we're trying to do is always monitor equity in the school, in terms of what's available in terms of equal opportunities for students.
And I believe earlier, Miss Sheila had her hand raised. She may.
I don't see Sheila. Sheila, are you? I can't see. Are you muted? I'm not hearing you.
She's muted.
There, okay. No, I don't have a question. My hand went up by accident.
Okay.
I'm on an iPad, and so I'm struggling here.
Okay, Miss Marlene has her hand raised.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is just an overall question about your group. Are you always student focused, or do you also are you also teacher focused? For example, teacher pay and issues like, issues like that.
Yeah, teacher pay is something we've definitely advocated for. We've not been as focused on it. One of the problems is teacher pay got tied into the lack of the state budget last year, because the governor actually wanted the teachers to get a higher pay, as well as some other issues that he vetoed the whole budget. So teachers, unfortunately, were victims of that General Assembly tiff, I guess, with the governor. So yes, we definitely do watch it and monitor it. And I think if we get a budget this year, definitely teacher salaries will go up, and we just have to keep monitoring that.
Thanks.
1 minute left. Do we need our minute? Are there any other questions? Nothing, Allison?
No, ma'am, right now we don't have any.
All right, well, we saved a minute on it. Here we go. So I think next is Barbara Burrell, and she's going to talk on voter services. And thank you all.
Barb, unmute.
Oh, there I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. I got mixed up here. Okay, voter services. So we have a voter service program in both Brunswick County and in New Hanover County, and are trying to get one in Pender County. And I'll be talking here mainly, well, both for all of our goals. And Johnette is going to be joining me and presents some of the goals here. Carol Ellis also works with us in doing the forums, candidate forums in New Hanover County, so she may chime in also. And just to let you know that Jana Albritton is going to come aboard, taking Johnette's place for the coming year. So just let you know who we are. What we've been talking about, what we'd like to do is work more to create a voter services team. Right now, at least in Brunswick County, I sort of work as just an individual, and when anything's coming up like a voter registration drive at an event, I reach out and get people to get involved in doing that. But I'd like us to have, in addition to having people just jump in and on those occasions, a group to think more thoroughly and broadly about voters registration, and especially about people who are not registered to vote. How can we do a better job of reaching out, or figure out how to reach out to these people? So I'd like to get somewhat even a semi-formal or a formal team to do that, both in Brunswick County and New Hanover County, to expand our operations. And also number 2, along with number 1, particularly in Brunswick County, I want to understand who are the people who are not registered to vote. We look at people who are registered to vote and then don't turn out to vote, but it's really difficult to figure out, well, who's sitting out there who's not registered to vote, and how could we talk with them, meet with them, and get them into the process. And I think that's particularly important in terms of inclusion, our diversity, equity, and inclusion goals. So hopefully we're going to be working on that more thoroughly in the next coming year. And particularly I want to go through, for myself in Brunswick County, is to go through all the information that we can get about voting in Brunswick County in 2020, working with the Fair Elections team about absentee voting, non-voters, and things like that. So we really want to increase that. So I'm going to turn it over to Johnette to talk about candidate forums, or Carol.
Okay, I'll get us started and see if Carol wants to. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Carol, did you want to start, or I'll get started here. As in years past, we'll have some candidate forums, or at least a candidate forum. It'll be in person or virtual, depending on the health guidelines this year. I think Carol did an excellent job in all the candidate forums that were held last fall, and a lot of people attended. I don't know about the dates yet. I understand that census data may be postponed, and that may impact the timing of the elections. So we'll just have to kind of wait and see what the calendar is like for that. In New Hanover County, we will hold a candidate forum for the city of Wilmington, because Carol Ellis has already promised that she would be involved in organizing that. We have beach municipalities that have occasionally asked us to help, but they have other local civic organizations that generally will do their forums if needed. And so, of course, Barb's got quite a thing on her plate here. She has forums that she can do in some of the bigger places like Leland and Southport and I think Navassa. She'll have to add something to that, but they have, I believe, in Brunswick County, like 20-ish municipalities. So sometimes they don't have competition. So it's just kind of something you have to wait and see. Barb, would you add anything to that?
No, you're correct. There are, I think, 25, 27 municipalities. Some of them don't have very little competition. So if there's no competition, spending our time creating a forum probably isn't useful. But other times we get, like Bald Head Island asks us to come and do it, and Oak Island, and those forums have always been very well attended. And so again, we'll be monitoring who's signing up to run in the various communities to find out where it might be viable to have forums, and also wait to see when voting is going to happen at the local level.
Okay, Carol, Alice, did you have anything you wanted to add to New Hanover County? Okay. Well, with that, I'll move on to voter education. I did a short survey of some of the people who are most active with helping with voter services in New Hanover County and asked them about what kinds of things they think we might need to work on this year, and got numerous responses saying that we need some public education on basic civics, basic election laws, voting laws, and particularly in this time when I guess people have noticed all the states have different rules, and certainly our rules change too. So this year we need to pay careful attention to some of the election laws that are maybe now in the courts, or some of the new legislation that might come forward. We need to particularly watch for legislation that would impose some voter suppression. So in addition to doing that, then we need to make sure that the public is aware of it. Now, how we're going to do that, I don't know, could be postcards, flyers, virtual type presentations, or in-person presentations if health guidelines work for that. We are hoping that the Education Action Team and the Fair Election Action Team, who share some of our goals there, will partner with us, and we can work to figure out how we can make some of these basic election and voting laws a little bit more accessible to folks. So details to be thought about and pondered here and worked out. But if you have ideas, they are very welcome. So now, Barb, you have one more section there, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I have one section. Let me also, one thing I wanted to mention before about some of the challenges that I think as a team we could work on is that when we try to do voter registration drives at some of the local businesses, at least in Brunswick County, they all say no. You know, they don't want to get involved in politics. So somehow making them see that it's civic education and it's not partisan. So we need lots of ideas to how we can work with some of those places, because they may be good places to get people who are not registered to vote, as opposed to some of the other kinds of events where most everyone who attends is already registered to vote. Anyway, that's an idea we want to work on. And just finally to say that in terms of partner organizations, as Johnette has shown you, there's a lot, particularly in New Hanover County, partner organizations. And in Brunswick County, we've been working with the NAACP there, but I'd like to also, I think there are probably some other groups out there that we don't know much about. like the Fly Girls that was mentioned in our topics that we had a while ago. Veronica talked about. I don't know who they are, but I want to get involved with them. So hopefully we're going to reach out to even more organizations. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. I believe Miss Joanne has her hand raised.
Yes, I do. By the way, Barb, I know who the Fly Girls are. So,
Oh, good.
Barb, so reach out to me. I can connect you with the Fly Girls. I know it's already come up, but I'm so concerned about everything that's going on with voter suppression. And I'm sure there's overlap, as you mentioned, between the Fair Elections Action Team and between voter services and between the Education Action Team. So I guess I just want to, make sure, I know Bridget's writing stuff down, that voter suppression and doing everything we can to fight voter suppression is in our plan somewhere.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And especially as you say, as we work with the Fair Elections Team to make sure that, and I'm sure Gail will talk about that some more too. It's absolutely extremely important.
Right, lots of overlap.
Okay, next I believe Miss Sharon has her hand raised.
There we go. Last night I attended, I believe it was a league Zoom presentation on staying civilly active. And there was an excellent presentation on voter laws, voter registration. It was very succinct, very understandable, well presented. I hope it's recorded, but I believe that was a league presentation last night that could be used in any kind of presentation, whether to a civics class or even coming into our retirement communities like Del Webb, because everybody is new and just learning about the voting laws here in North Carolina. And another suggestion I might have is, last year, I'm certain you probably all received the mailer on the races for the districts for the judges in each of the districts, as well as the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals, giving background information on everybody who was up for election. And that was extremely useful, because so often, we really don't get a lot of information. We may get the newspaper for, running just a little background for, one issue. But if we could do something that would be a handout on some background information, particularly on the, just the new Hanover or Brunswick County elections, that would be extremely helpful.
Allison,
Can
do
I
you
just say,
Okay, Allison was involved in that UNCW program. If you want to comment on that, Allison.
Yeah, Marla's was one of the facilitators as well, and I just thought it went great last night, so I'm glad that you were attended.
I agree.
Thank you so much. Next, I believe Miss Joanne, and then Gail has her hand raised.
I think Gail was first, but it just triggered something that in the Brunswick County Democratic Party, we have a member who teaches government at one of the high schools. And when we do get into doing that civics education, I'm sure she would love to have you guys come as guest speakers for her classes. And just as an aside, she mentioned having Frank Eiler come to one of her classes and actually say that when it comes to voting, he just votes however they tell him to vote, which I thought was horrifying. And that's all I have to say.
I would like to say that New Hanover County also has a retired social studies civics teacher named Carol Ellis, and she's hanging out with us today and has been running the candidate forums. So we're going to look to her for a resource, I think.
Yeah, and can I just say for Joanne that I'd love to get the name of that teacher, the government teacher, because talking to a lot of the schools in Brunswick County, we've run into very little interest. So having someone who would be excited about it to help us figure out how to get involved in the schools would be fabulous.
Will do.
Thank you. I think Gail had a question.
Yeah, and then Brit.
Sorry.
I do have a comment, more than a question. What wasn't mentioned was Vote 411. And that is the resource that really allows candidates running for office a chance to talk about their credentials, and then they answer questions. And so that is a resource that we used for all sorts of races in the past, and we'll be continuing to use that in the future. And we have a new coordinator for Vote 411, but where the municipal candidates run, they should be answering those questions and putting their information on Vote 411.
I think we're out of time now.
Yes.
Gail's right. I meant to mention Vote 411 and then it slipped my mind. Thank you, Gail.
If you didn't get your question asked, please type it in the chat so we can catch it. Thank you very much. Barb, you want to introduce our next speaker?
Okay, I'm turning it over to Beth Hansen to talk about the our environmental action team.
I'm sorry, I just want to interrupt for one quick second. I do remember there being a call for volunteers to help with Vote 411, so I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay. Thank you. So our goals are listed on the screen. I'd just like to say we try to view all of our environmental actions through an environmental justice lens. And I like the following definition of environmental justice. Environmental equity means we poison people equally. Environmental justice seeks to stop poisoning people, period. It does not seek to redistribute harms, but to abolish them. So I think that's an easy way to remember environmental justice. Stop poisoning people, period. Climate change is clearly disproportionately impacting low-income communities of color. And obviously in our area, we saw that in the aftermath of Hurricane Florence and the other recent hurricanes. Some coastal cities such as Miami are even seeing what they're calling climate gentrification. They're pushing low-income residents out of affordable housing, which is located in higher elevation areas, which were not attractive before, but now are suddenly hot markets for wealthier people to move. So there are all sorts of environmental justice issues here. We have two climate action goals, one state and one local. We're hoping to see some clean energy action at the state level starting this year, at least from the governor's office. Governor Cooper signed the Clean Energy Plan in 2019, and then last year there were all sorts of stakeholder groups that worked on specific plan goals. And most of them have submitted reports or submitting them shortly. So this year should be the year for action. One advocacy effort is already underway to get North Carolina to join something called the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, or RGGI. It's a carbon reduction cap and invest program that East Coast states from Maine to Virginia are participating in. So North Carolina would be a logical addition. I sent out an action alert on this recently. It would be a bigger challenge to get clean energy legislation passed by the General Assembly. There is strong statewide bipartisan citizen support for more renewable energy. But unfortunately, many of our conservative legislators haven't gotten this message yet. And Duke Energy is also a powerful lobbying force in the General Assembly. Duke is still very committed to a natural gas future at the expense of our climate. And in fact, there's a hearing next week at the Utility Commission where to review Duke Energy's 15-year plan, which shows what they're planning to do for the next 15 years. And they're all in on natural gas and not so much on renewables. So I did send out an action alert yesterday to get people to comment. The hearing is Tuesday night, but you can also send written comments. For our local climate goal, we plan to target Wilmington and New Hanover County. Last year, Mayor Sappho convened a Clean Energy Task Force. I represented the league on this work. Our report was presented to the City Council in early January. And unfortunately, to date, the City Council has not done anything with the report yet. So we plan to follow up on that to see what's happening, if anything, and to nudge them along if they haven't taken action. We're also hoping to get the New Hanover County Commissioners to make a clean energy commitment. The third goal, air and water quality issues are always on our radar, and typically they have a disparate impact on low-income communities. Gen X and other PFAS are obviously still of concern in our area. And next week, as we already mentioned, we're hosting a speaker to educate us on hog waste management issues, which is Sharon's husband. If you're curious about what methyl bromide is, it's the highly toxic fumigant used on some logs exported from our port. One of our partners, Cape Fear River Watch, is partnering with New Hanover NAACP on an environmental justice civic engagement project. And we hope this initiative will help teach us how to better engage with local communities of color. We've offered to help as needed. One area of environmental justice I think we can improve upon is letting communities of color lead. White middle-class environmental groups tend to think we know what's best for everyone. So I think we can keep that in mind all the time. And I have to ask for all of you, if you hear of any environmental justice issues as you work with all your partners throughout our community, please let me know. With that, I'd like to turn it over to you folks. Do you have any environmental concerns we're not addressing? Are there local planning efforts impacting the environment you want us to look at? We always welcome new members. We're particularly looking for members from Brunswick County so we could be a little more active on issues in Brunswick. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe Miss Marilyn Pretty has her hand raised, and then Bridget has a question.
Thanks, Beth. We had the hot topics with Brayton Willis from the Brunswick County NAACP, and he's looking for support. So from all kinds of organizations. So we're hoping the league can, not sure what the support would look like at this point, but to support that project, which is NAACP proposal for the Gullah Geechee corridor. And some of you may have heard the coastline last week about that. So, and the other person highly involved is Barnes Sutton, the planning director for the town of Navassa.
Yes, Marilyn, do you have anything more specific that you'd like us to include in our goals? Because we
I'll be joining your action team shortly when we find a new secretary. So I'll find out from Brayton exactly what kind of support he needs. I know he wants it to be a big community effort to support the corridor and the Blueway Greenway, but specifically what the league could do, I'm not sure yet.
Could you just say support the Gullah Geechee pathway at this point, just to get it on there?
Right, to get it on the list, and then we'll fill in the details later, perhaps.
Okay, that sounds excellent. That is something we welcome becoming a part of.
Thank you.
And the Blueway Greenway is certainly an environmental issue. So thanks, Marilyn.
Thank you.
Beth, you want to give a plug for the annual meeting?
The annual meeting.
Speaker.
The speaker will be on the Gullah Geechee Blueway Greenway Trail, and so it's really an exciting project, and Marilyn can probably speak to it in a little more detail. Marilyn, you want to tell a little bit more about it?
Well, NAACP in Brunswick County has proposed to the National Park Service to establish this Greenway Blueway corridor that would run from Navassa all the way down to Southport along 133. And Navassa's made a lot of progress already in linking some park proposals. It also addresses the all the environmental injustice that occurred in Navassa that has like 6 of 7 or 6 of 8 of the brownfields that are in the county are all in that area. And Barnes has done a lot of research into the history of how this has happened. And it was, you know, it goes back to the white property owners when they lost their plantations, they just decided to start fertilizer plants in that area in Brunswick County. And of course, they lived across the river and didn't have to put up with the smell and noise and all the other issues related. So it's been a long history of injustice. And this project brings light to that and helps to create a healthy recreation and all kinds of, you know, positive aspects that will evolve from that sad history.
I would just like to add a shout out to Sue Ann Rush. I think she's on this call. She has kept our league engaged in the Navassa Superfund site action. She had Barnes Sutton come to one of our action team meetings and speak to us. And she's also attended a lot of the Superfund site meetings to keep us engaged in those issues. So thanks, Sue Ann. Any other ideas or questions?
Oh, I was just going to say, this is Bridget, that since I'm kind of on both action teams working with Beth, so they're, you know, Beth has been really good about putting out information on what's coming up, and kind of shared with the whole team about North Carolina Breathe conference that's coming up in April, where they're talking about health, equity, and climate change. So even though we kind of have these different action teams that work on different things, it very much overlaps the environmental justice, social justice causes. So I'm just putting kudos out to Beth to keeping us all aware of what's happening out there and opportunities we have for learning and engaging with our community. Thank you.
Thanks, Bridget. Any other questions?
Right now, that's it. If you have any more, just please put them in the chat or raise your hand.
Thanks, Allison. Okay, I will turn it over to Gail Bromley with the Fair Elections Action Team.
Hi, everybody. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, good. The Fair Elections Action Team was started in 2017 after a convention by the state where it became really clear that the whole state was going to try to make redistricting reform a priority, a program priority statewide. And so we started to get together here in the Lower Cape Fear and say we wanted to be a part of that. So we've been working on educating the public about what is gerrymandering and why redistricting is so important. And we did a lot of presentations and a lot of work in that area. But the one thing that we were not able to do was get our legislature to hear one of the 7 bills and debate it on the floor that would have given some redistricting reform. So we were disappointed that that did not occur. But because the census is so late this year, there's still hope that there may be some movement to get reform on the book. So we're not going to give up. It probably won't be as extensive as what we had hoped for, but there will be bills introduced, and so stay tuned on that. The one thing I do want to say is HR 1 and Senate 1 in the US Congress is probably the most extensive and expansive piece of legislation that could make such a difference for voting rights, for rights in terms of representation for your votes. It is also looks at gerrymandering and saying that each state should have an independent commission that does the drawing of the districts. So if you're really interested in helping all of the states not have to deal with all the debates and the lawsuits that have been over the last decade, it's really important to support that legislation. And it's in the Senate now, and we hope the Senate will act on it, because that would make a huge, huge difference. Remember that gerrymandering is the drawing of districts for partisan advantage, and it hurts especially all of the minority populations, as well as those that are a little less secure in terms of their participation in government. The other two things that we're going to be working on are changes in law in North Carolina to help ensure that elections are fair and accessible to all voters. And we're going to be looking very closely at anything that disenfranchises voters. One of the things that's going to come up, because it was passed as a constitutional amendment, a lot of people voted for that didn't realize probably the implications, but is a voter ID law. And so we want to make sure that as much as possible we can maybe see that it doesn't truly come to fruition, but if it comes to fruition, the idea is to make sure that as many possibilities for getting that voter ID as possible that would be acceptable is out there for voters, and make it so that it's fairer for voters. But there are other laws that we think could change and be changed and help make access for voters more equitable and include all voters. We really want to promote the civic engagement of every voter. And the last one is the National Popular Vote Bill. That's a bill that has been around a while, and it's been adopted by various states. And North Carolina is going to be taking up this bill. And what it basically says is that if your state, if it's adopted and enough states agree, that all of the electors will be representing the candidate that gets the most popular vote. Boy, I mean, you talk about one person, one vote, and the importance of changing the elector system so that it's fairer. This is probably a very significant bill. Several states have already passed it, but they have to get over that hump of the 270 electors, and it may be more with a census coming through. If it's more votes, then they find that they finally say, okay, there's enough electors that are pledged to the candidate for US president that has the most popular vote. That means everybody's vote counts equally. Can't think of anything much more important than that. So we have everything in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion that really is part of fair elections. We want elections to be as fair as possible. Two of these, the redistricting reform and the national popular vote, are nationwide. And so we're talking about really joining the North Carolina coalition, if you will, with other states. So we have a major effort there. I'd like you to remember that April 29th is going to be a very important part of that. So I open it to you for questions. I would love to have your questions.
Okay, Ms. Catherine has her hand raised.
Gail, just so I understand the national popular vote correctly, if North Carolina voted for candidate A, but the country voted for candidate B, our electors would vote for B. Is that correct?
That would be how it would work, yes. Instead of winner take all in a state, this would be a winner of the national popular vote if there were enough states that said that their electors would be obligated to vote for the national popular vote winner. So in the case of North Carolina, in the last election, if we had the national popular vote nationwide, our state would have gone for President Biden. The electors would have put in their votes for President Biden. Likewise, if the national popular vote went to Donald Trump, then he would have gotten the electors. So, but right now we don't have enough states signed on, but we're close. And Ted Fuller is going to be our leader for the national popular vote.
So it doesn't,
presentations for that.
Gail, it doesn't cancel out the electoral college, but it does cancel out the electoral college.
It does, and it does it in a way that doesn't require huge constitutional changes. And that was the reason it was done in the way it is implemented, will be implemented if it passes, so that you don't have to go through a tremendous, long, arduous process for amending the Constitution.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Sharon, and then I believe Ms. Barbara.
Yes, Gail, there's always one more thing. My phone started ringing. I know this is addressed in HR 1, but is there any effort on campaign finance reform?
You're right, Sharon, in that it is addressed in HR 1 and Senate 1, and that's the place to really have it be addressed. It needs to be nationally addressed. And that is, there's so many provisions in Senate 1. I'm going to call it Senate 1, Bill Senate 1, because that's where it is right now. It's the John Lewis voting rights pieces, it's the redistricting pieces, and it's the campaign finance reform pieces. And we are really pushing to see that Senate 1 passes. And we would love to have people call Senator Tillis, Senator Burr, and say, we really want to see S1 pass.
Thank you. Next is Ms. Barbara and then Ms. Bonnie.
Am I unmuted? Yes. Okay. Just Gail, I was thinking about the National Popular Vote Bill and how it would affect the Electoral College. I've been doing some sort of fun research on who the electors really are. And I was just wondering, this is probably a question for Ted, if a state like North Carolina joined the popular vote and it became part of the law, who would be the electors in the state? Because right now, each party chooses their electors, and whoever has the most votes, their electors get to go to the state capitol and cast their ballots. But now, if North Carolina voted for Donald Trump, but Vice President Biden won the election, so would the Republican electors have to go and vote for Vice President Biden? Something like that. I think that's an interesting question.
Yeah, my understanding is that they would be obligated to do so if they pass the MPV bill in North Carolina.
Boy, that would be a lot of fun.
Ted is going to do a hot topics on this in May, and it has a little less time sensitive than the probably redistricting reform, because the census is so late. The census data is so late this year for the 10-year period that we're going to have a chance to maybe get something done that would affect redistricting. But yeah, so the national popular vote, we're going to be working on all year round. Both of us, both Ted and I, have presentations that we're very willing to give on both the redistricting reform and national popular vote. So the biggest thing that listeners could do is help us by getting us audiences so that we can do those presentations.
Ms. Bonnie had her hand raised.
Yes, I have a question about HR 1. Did election officials have input into that bill? I had heard a criticism from someone who's, frankly, I don't trust what that person was saying because of past things that person had said. But anyway, he was saying that they had had no input and there would be costs associated with it that states wouldn't be able to manage and that they couldn't do it, just complaints like that. Could you address that criticism?
Honestly, Bonnie, I don't know how much and who had that much influence over the writing of the bill. And I don't know if anyone else does who's on this call. I can't really answer you. I don't know.
That's something to be prepared for, to be able to answer, to be able to counteract that.
I just don't see it as, I mean, you know, okay, so automatic voter registration, you know, is that going to be so difficult to do? That's one of the provisions. Another provision is getting a independent commission to draw the districts. Yeah, some of these will have some fiscal implications, but I don't think they're daunting, especially if you're talking about giving everybody a chance to make their vote count equally. And that's what we really want. We want everybody's vote to count. Nobody's to be diminished. Any other questions?
Yes, ma'am. There was one more in the chat. I believe a computer froze for a second. If you could just tell the importance again of the April thing you were mentioning.
Yeah, April 29th, we're going to be working, I'm working with a state leader on fair elections, and we're going to try to come up with events in every state that help emphasize redistricting reform. Now, the date was chosen because that's the date when normally you would get the census data at the state level. It would be given out. This year, we're not going to see that until September 30th. Big difference, big change, but they kept the date the same nationally. So every state's going to be looking at things. And okay, thank you.
You can finish your sentence.
Well, the whole thing is we're going to be looking at how can we really push our legislators to consider this, make sure that they consider it. So stay tuned. I don't know precisely what.
Okay, that finishes our presentations right now, and we're going to turn it over to Bridget to see if we have any new ideas that she's captured in the parking lot. It's your time to also bring up any other comments you'd like to. Make sure that if you have an idea that something triggered that you want to make sure we keep on track of, let's get it captured now. So Bridget, I'll let you take it and then we'll see what everyone wants to contribute.
Okay, so this is what we've captured from all the questions that people have asked. And if there's anything else, let us know, because Marla helped me with typing up the notes because it's kind of hard to get everybody when you're talking yourself or getting everything written down succinctly. So these are the parking lot are issues that don't really necessarily fall under one action team. So we got the broadband access
Bridget,
equity. Yes.
the voter suppression, the HR one is the one I just talked about. So
Okay.
it's something that we're definitely pushing for. So that really is part of Fair Elections Action Team.
Okay. And then reaching out to Fly Girls group, which I can't remember which action team that was for. Was that
It was
environmental?
muted.
That came under environmental?
No.
Gail, you did not have voter suppression in your goals. I think that's why she put it up on the parking lot. So it's just to make sure that we get it included specifically in some way in your goals if you want to.
Yeah, that was the whole idea with the working on legislation that would make voting fairer and more inclusive.
Okay, so we just may amend that a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the Fly Girls was the voter services.
Okay.
Is that right?
That was my understanding.
That was voter services. Okay, so is that
That's okay. Just leave it on there. We'll maybe mark it as voter services.
okay? Maybe as a partner. So I think what I kind of noticed when everybody was talking on their different goals is that we have more partners than we really have listed. I know someone said we have tons of partners under the Wyatt, but I think it sounds like to me that all the action teams are working with different partners, but they might not necessarily have put them on their screen. So Fly Girls would be more like reaching out to them as a partner, correct?
Mm-hmm. Potentially.
I can't remember who said that because I know I told them I would connect them with the Fly Girls. Was it Barbara Burrell?
Yes, but I'm muted and I can't figure out what to do.
You're
Oh.
not muted now. We can hear
We
you.
hear you.
Oh, okay. Yes, yes.
Okay.
It was a group that Veronica Carter mentioned when she did the hot topics for us in Brunswick County. So yes, voter services, I'd like to reach out to them. I don't know nothing about them.
Is there
Okay, I'll
anything
connect you.
else? I'm sorry.
Bridget,
Anything else?
there's a request to make sure that vote 411 is put into the parking lot so that we get it incorporated into the appropriate goals for probably both voter services and feet.
Yeah, so I just added that, and it seems it kind of goes across all action teams. Well, I know that Marla and I got a grant for Vote 411 to make the door hangers because of the pandemic. You couldn't really talk to people, so we came up with the door hanger idea and handed those out. There was 800 door hangers, handed them out, or actually put them on the doors. 800 houses that were low voter turnout, so less than 30% voter turnout. And that really sparked a lot of dialogue, even though, you wouldn't think you'd see people walking around the neighborhoods. People would just ask what we were trying to hand out. And so we were able to spread out a lot of information that way. So I don't know. I think that, probably all action teams need to get that information out about Vote 411. It's not necessarily just 2 action teams.
Mm-hmm.
This is probably too detailed, but I do remember seeing something about bumper stickers in another league. And I thought that was such a great idea. I might even put that bumper sticker on my car.
Oh, for Vote 411. That's a good
Yeah.
idea. Yeah.
Carol, did you raise your hand?
I raised mine. It's Gail.
Just a second, Gail. Carol's unmuting first.
Okay.
You're still muted, Carol.
Okay. I didn't have anything to say now. I was going to say something when we were back in the voter service thing, but it was covered, so.
Okay. Carol Roberts, do you want to unmute? You can't. Can we unmute Carol?
Yes, asked her to unmute.
Can we? There we go. There you go.
There we go. We have so many wonderful, actually exhaustive goals that could keep us busy for very busy this whole year. And I'm curious as to approximately what percentage of our members are actually involved in action teams or board positions. Because if we could find, I know this has been an ongoing thing, but if we could find some new ways to reach out to new members or members who are uninvolved, who keep rejoining every year, but never do anything except maybe read the papers, the memos that come out, then we could accomplish so much more. That's just
I totally agree. Thank you. Gail, did you have something?
I had a couple of things. I wanted to make sure people knew that we have a volunteer to be the coordinator for Vote 411. I'm going to introduce him at the FEET meeting next week, but it's Chris Piloton. He lives here in Leland, and he has a job that is basically computer oriented. So he's going to do that. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that for FEET, we have a lot of partners, and I just couldn't begin to list them all, but for Blueprint alone, which is a coalition of partners, there's 40 members. So we do have definitely a large membership of partners in redistricting reform. We're going to be looking at 2 major local leagues that are doing the National Popular Vote, and that's Asheville-Buncombe area as well as the Piedmont Triad. So we have partners.
We certainly do. And we have a lot of work to do. I'd like particularly, Joanne, do you want a quick comment? You put your hand up.
Let me unmute myself here. My quick comment just had to do with parking lot issues. Do you want me to wait until we're done, or is this a time?
We are wrapping up, so go ahead.
So my quick comment was renaming the league so that it's not just women. I want to put that out there.
Okay. We recognize that's a national issue, so we can still voice it and get it moving, but yes. We have had members that are of the opposite gender since the 1970s. We just don't necessarily realize that, but you can always promote the league out. We have a number of male members, including our new Vote 411 coordinator. So encourage your husbands, friends, everyone to join the league. I'd like to really thank everyone who presented today and to all of you who commented and were engaged. This was really a very nicely done program, considering we had to Zoom with a short time frame. I think we accomplished a lot. If you have something about a particular area that you want to get involved with, or you want to comment on, you can go to the website, you get information on how to connect to that action team. Speak up. We will try and reach out to members who are not part of the teams, but you can also step forward. We would love to have you. And I would particularly like to call attention to the new Voter Services Committee that's going to be helping them get the word out. This is the heart and soul of our organization in many ways. It's how we get people educated into the polls. And every one of us should be involved in some way in making that happen. And it doesn't mean you have to pound the streets, and it doesn't mean you have to go register voters. You can sit on your comfortable sunroom and make phone calls. You can reach out with your computer. There are a lot of ways to get involved, and I really encourage everyone to do that because it's so important. We do have hot topics coming up. We have a lot of new programs in the last few months of this year, and then the 12th of June, we will have our annual meeting. And again, it will be Zoom this year, so you won't have to dress up. You can pour your own glass of wine and sit at home quietly and enjoy it. We'll have a great speaker. It'll be a good program. We'll be electing our new officers, and we will be voting on some bylaw changes and putting forward the program for next year. So I certainly encourage all of you to be there on the 12th of June in your comfiest clothes. You can do it all. Thank you again. If there are no more comments from anyone, have a great day. It's beautiful out there. Enjoy this afternoon. See you at the next Hot Topics. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.